So we're going to start off now with a very, very famous rook endgame. This is the so-called Lucena position, and white is a pawn up here with the king in front of the pawn, stopping it from promoting. And you'll notice the white king is completely blocked off. So the question is, how does white win this position? Feel free to pause the video here and come back once you think you found the solution. Okay, so we start off by pushing the black king away. The only way we're going to make any progress here is by getting the king out. And in order to do that, we need to either move the rook, which isn't going to be possible, or the king. So we first check the king with rook to d1 check. Now if black tries king e6, which seems reasonable, then white just goes king e8, and in fact there's no way to stop the pawn from promoting on the next move. Black can try a sort of scary mate threat here with rook a8, but in fact it just doesn't work. White just promotes to a queen, black checks on a8, but then our rook drops back and defends with rook to d8. So since black can't play king e6, black has to play king c6 or king c7, moving the king away from the pawn. Now if you said here that after you've moved the king away we can then run the king forwards, you're not quite right, I'm afraid. And the reason is the following, is that black can just keep checking you. Rook e2 check. If you play king f6 here, for example, rook f2 check. Okay, well you can't move away from the pawn, you've got to keep defending it, so king e6, rook e2 check, king f5, rook f2 check, well, king's got to go back now, and eventually you're just going to be chased back to where you came from. The other alternative in this position was to go back to d8, but then black just plays rook f2, attacks the pawn, and you have to defend it. So you move the king back and black checks you again. Eventually, you're going to end up back in front of the pawn. And this is why this position is so important to understand, because black can pretty much force your king in front of the pawn in a lot of positions. Here though, instead of moving the king to e7, we need to build a bridge. Now if you've heard that phrase before, this is what it refers to. It's how we win the Lucena position. We build a bridge with the move rook d4. Now, to the untrained eye, this looks a very bizarre move. It doesn't look like it achieves anything. But it does something very specific. Let me show you why. So let's say black wastes a move with rook g1. Well then now, the white king can come forwards with king e7. Well, black just tries the same defense as we've seen before, rook e1 check. White carries on forwards with king f6, rook f1 check, king e6, rook e1 check, king f5, but then after rook f1 check here, white doesn't have to go back and defend the pawn. White can simply block the check with rook f4. We have built the bridge with this rook on the 4th rank, allowing us to block the check. And after rook f4, there's no way to stop the pawn. So that's building the bridge. Now you may be saying, Tom, why rook g1? Surely the black king can just attack the rook on with king c5, and that's a far better move. Well, it's probably a more proactive move, but it also loses. Because white can now get the rook behind the pawn with rook f4, and white's just going to get the king out. If black tries and stops this, well, white goes king e8, rook e2 check, king d8, and there's no way to stop this pawn promoting. And similarly, if black tries these cheeky little checkmate threats, well, this time we promote to a queen with check, but equally we have rook f6 check as well, forcing the king away, and then we promote. Either way, we're going to end up in a winning position. So to summarise in the Lucena position here, we first want to drive the opponent king away, make it weaker. It's generally a good idea. If you can make your opponent's pieces weaker without weakening your own position, that's generally a good thing to do. We force the king away from the pawn and then build that bridge. And if you can't remember exactly what square you need to build the bridge on, just think about how the king's going to come forwards. Here we could see that it was going to go to e7, then it's going to move again. In our case it moved to the side and then forwards. And this was the point where we couldn't go forwards anymore because otherwise we wouldn't be defending the pawn. So this is where I'd think, okay, now when he checks me on the f-file, we need to put a rook on f4. And so to do that, we build a bridge by playing rook to d4. So that's the Lucena position, and it's a very, very important position to understand. Not only will it help you to think how you can win a rook endgame, but it also helps you to calculate and see how you can get away from these perpetual checks. Next up, we're going to see another famous rook endgame position called the Philidors position. This is the so-called Philidors position. Here we are playing as the defender, as the black player. So I flip the board round and white is now coming down the board. Now the difference between this position and the previous Lucena position we've just seen is that it's the defender's king that is in front of the pawn rather than the attacking king. And this means that black actually has a way to draw this position. Feel free again to pause the video at this point and have a think about the position and come back when you think you found the way that black can draw this. Okay, so the crucial move here is the first one. Remember I said that this position is very different to the last one because the white king is not in front of the pawn. Black wants to keep it this way, and so plays the move rook to b6, cutting the white king off and stopping it from advancing. A common move to think here is to play the move rook b1 and try to give checks behind, but white can just move the king in front of the pawn. Not with king f6, because we just go rook b6 check, but instead with king g6. And if we play rook g1 check, then king f6, well, black's in a lot of trouble. He's got to stop checkmate, and white's eventually going to get into that Lucena position. So rook b6 is the crucial move to stop the white king coming forwards. Now let's say white just plays rook a8 check. Well, the black king just comes forwards to f7, and if white then tries and shuffles with rook c8, well, we shuffle on the 6th rank, keeping this rook from blocking the king. So okay, white can't do anything proactive with his rook. Why doesn't he try coming round with his king with king f4? Well, this isn't going to achieve much either. We play rook c6, keeping the rook on the 6th rank. King e5, rook b6. If the white king continues to come across, well, then we just attack the pawn. King goes back, we go back. So there's no king move that can make any progress for white, and there's no rook move that makes any progress for white. The only way white can make progress is by pushing the pawn to f6. And this is the crucial line. But now the white king cannot get in front of the white pawn. So now we can play rook to b1 and give these perpetual checks from behind. And this is the crucial reason we play rook b6, to force the white pawn forwards before we give these checks. If white tries and comes forwards and threatens checkmate with king g6, we just play rook g1 check and force the king back. And in fact, there's no way now to stop the checks. And if the king runs away, well, we can either give a check, or we can even just play rook to f1 and attack the pawn. And that's what you would do if the white king came forwards like this to attack the rook. You just play rook f1, attack the pawn. He can't go f7, you just take it and get a draw. So after rook b1, you may be thinking, well, okay, why can't the white rook just build a bridge like the previous position with rook a4? And this is where the black king position becomes crucial, because now we can play rook g1 check, and after the trade of rooks, and king f7, king f5, king f8, this is a draw. And this is a very well known king and pawn versus king draw. I'll quickly demonstrate why. We gain the opposition after king g6, king g8. And if the white king goes back, we go to f7. So the white pawn comes forwards. We play king f8. The only way to keep defending the pawn for white is king f6, but this is stalemate. And this is a very well known king and pawn versus king endgame. And if you don't know how to win as white with king and pawn versus king, or draw this type of position, I highly recommend you go and have a look at those positions, because they're very fundamental to basic endgames. So building the bridge doesn't work, moving the king forwards, as we've seen with king g6, doesn't work. Well, rook a8 check, well, king moves to f7. And again, we're still threatening all the checks, so white plays rook a7 check, but after king f8 we have exactly the same position. So there's no way for white to stop black from either winning the pawn or getting perpetual. So to summarise, the crucial move here is to cut the king off with rook b6, stop the opposing king from coming in front of the pawn. The other crucial point in this position is that the black king, the defending king, is on the square that white wishes to promote on, and it's in a perfect position to defend. We force the pawn forwards and then go for the perpetual. We cannot go for the perpetual straight away with rook b1 in this position, because the king can maneuver itself via g6 and then f6 to stop the checks. So we've just seen two fundamental positions, one where the extra pawn wins and one where the extra pawn doesn't win. Both these positions occur time and time again in rook endgames and are sort of the very basics of rook endgames. I hope these have been very, very useful to demonstrate some basic rook endgame technique, but also to get you thinking in the right way and how to approach an endgame, either in how to win it or how to draw it.